wildly spasmodic movements and endless empty prophesying. Beloved church, run.
Anything less than that, anything that perverts that, anything that changes that tries to redefine Christ as something else, Jesus as something else, is false doctrine.
Run for those that are only after your money. And they use one gimmick after another. One foolish
This is True News. I'm Rick Wiles. 9 more women have joined a lawsuit in Manhattan Supreme Court against Jeffrey Epstein's estate. The women filed suit anonymously as Jane Does. They said they were between the ages of 13 and 23 when they were recruited and sexually assaulted by Epstein. 2 victims said that they were repeatedly raped by Epstein and his associates. Sky Roberts, father of Virginia Roberts Giuffre, believes that Epstein was murdered on orders of powerful men who fear being exposed as participants in the child sex ring. His daughter accused Prince Andrew of having sex with her when she was 17 years old. She has repeatedly said that Ghislaine Maxwell recruited her to be a sex slave for Epstein's network of powerful men. Mr. Roberts told the Good Morning Britain TV show that he's furious because of what he knows about Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and others. He said Epstein is dead because someone wanted to make sure that nobody saw Epstein's records that he kept on wealthy, powerful men who visited Epstein's various estates. He told the TV show, quote, I know he didn't kill himself. It had to be somebody from above that came and got him and took him out, end of quote. Meanwhile, Alan Dershowitz's secret communications with Epstein could be made public soon. Mr. Charles Cooper, Virginia Roberts Giuffre's attorney, said they intend to seek the privileged attorney-client communications to prove that Dershowitz was personally motivated to assist Epstein in securing a sweetheart deal with prosecutors in 2008. Ms. Giuffre claims Epstein lent her to Dershowitz for sex. A Harvard law professor has vehemently denied the allegation. The request for discovery was made during a hearing regarding a defamation lawsuit. Attorney Cooper told the court that Dershowitz's private communications with Epstein could reveal whether Dershowitz was a participant in sexual activities with underage girls while he was representing Epstein in Epstein's efforts to avoid a long prison sentence. Hollywood tycoon Harvey Weinstein is due to appear in court this Friday for a bail hearing necessitated by changes in New York's criminal justice system that go into effect January 1st, 2020. Among the changes are the elimination of bail for nonviolent felonies and speeding up the timetable for prosecutors to share evidence with defense attorneys. The powerful, influential Hollywood movie producer pleaded not guilty to raping a woman in a Manhattan hotel room in 2013 and performing a forcible sex act on a different woman in 2006. Weinstein is free on a $1 million bail. His trial is scheduled to begin on January 6th. Now, another Weinstein is in the news today, Mikey Weinstein, the Jewish atheist and Jesus hater. Mr. Weinstein's Military Religious Freedom Foundation complained to the U.S. Department of Defense that American soldiers are using a Christian-owned company to engrave Bible verses on dog tags for military members and their families. The Bible verses were engraved on the identification tags by Shields of Strength, a Christian-owned company. Weinstein, the founder of the anti-Christian hate group, demanded that the U.S. Armed Forces stop allowing Shields of Strength from using the military emblem. Soon after, the Jewish atheist filed his complaints with each branch of the U.S. military. The Christian-owned company was notified that their license to use the trademark was revoked. Shields of Faith owner Kenny Vaughn was told by the U.S. Army Trademark Licensing Program Director Paul Jensen, quote, "You are not authorized to put biblical verses on your Army products. For example, Joshua 1:9. Please remove all biblical references from all your Army products," end of quote. First Liberty Institute is representing the Christian company. The Legal Defense Organization sent a letter to the U.S. Army yesterday calling on the branch to reinstate the trademark license because the Army's action is unconstitutional. In another recently anti-Christian action, Weinstein's group pressured Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas, to stop televising Christian television network TBN in the waiting lobby of the base's medical facility. Well, who is this enemy of the cross who attacks the Christian religious freedom of American soldiers? Weinstein's biography on his website says, quote, "Mikey was named one of the 50 most influential Jews in America by The Forward, one of the nation's preeminent Jewish publications. He also has received a nomination for the JFK's Profile and Courage Award and received the BuzzFlash Wings of Justice Award. In addition, Mikey was honored by a distinguished civil rights organization, Jews for Racial and Economic Justice, with the Rabbi Marshall T. Meyer Risk Taker Award for those who have taken risk in the pursuit of justice," end of quote. Today's NATO summit got off to a rocky start this morning when President Donald Trump described French President Emmanuel Macron as nasty. Your Trunews correspondent, Edward Szall, is in London to cover the important meeting of NATO allies. We're going to try to get Edward on the screen. We've been having some transmission problems in the last few minutes, so we'll see if Edward is available right now from London. Edward, glad to have you.
Rick, do you hear me?
Hey, I can hear you. We have a still. Obviously, we're having some problems with the video transmission, but we have your face frozen in time, but we can hear your voice. How's today's NATO summit going so far?
Well, the meeting that these leaders have come to London to have has yet to begun, but apparently the war of words has. The battle between these world leaders, I believe, on the talking points for the initial discussions that are supposed to take place tomorrow have already started quite a few diplomatic incidents. Rick, I'm actually, you can't see it, but I'm connecting with you from right in front of Buckingham Palace, which was actually was host to the 29 heads of state of the NATO member nations earlier this evening. There was a reception here. President Trump was there. The Secretary of States and foreign ministers from each of those nations in NATO were at this summit, along with the regular diplomats and the defense ministers. Because, Rick, when it comes to this year's NATO meeting here in London, the subject is, what are we going to convince our population about the enemies that we need to get the money for to have our defense ministries? Because, Rick, the boogeyman has shifted from Russia to China to now even to terrorism. Emmanuel Macron, for example, you mentioned that meeting between President Trump and Emmanuel Macron today. The row between them was really, including President Erdogan, was over the definition of terrorism.
Edward, I want to talk about this war of words between President Trump and President Macron. But before we get into this, did President Trump meet with Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth today?
Yes, reports are they met during the reception inside Buckingham Palace, which was this evening. The president's schedule was essentially he had breakfast with Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO Secretary General, then had his two bilateral meetings, one with the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, the other with Emmanuel Macron. Later in the day is when he actually met up with for tea at the Clarence House, right adjacent to the Buckingham Palace, with Prince Charles. And then later on it was when he had the major reception where he met, at least talked briefly with Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth.
Do you have any knowledge of what they discussed?
Not yet, but I can't imagine that the discussion of trade didn't come up. And in addition to this, the Queen has kept it very cordial. She's actually half the time maybe the mediator. If I were to speculate, I think the Queen might be trying to ensure President Trump, maybe even through his wife, the First Lady, who was at this reception, keeps the president from maybe inciting any major disagreements at the summit tomorrow. Though obviously in England, the Queen publicly at least doesn't get involved in politics of the day. Oh, really? You think maybe she is acting as a mediator to calm the president's words before the meeting starts tomorrow? I think so. I think that maybe this wasn't even the initial intention, but the fact that she was placed in a meeting with the president prior to the summit's beginning, and the fact that before the president even came over here, he was talking about slashing the budget for NATO. They already knew there was a disagreement over the treatment of the Kurdish rebel forces in Syria. I would assume that Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of England, or the Shadow Cabinet and the Privy Council for England, that they asked the Queen or members of the royal family, because Prince Charles, the future King of England, was also meeting with the president. If they didn't speak with the president about potentially mediating language, then they might not have done good service to the other participants in the summit.
Hey, Edward, one other question before we get into the Trump-Macron spat today. I saw headlines regarding President Trump's comments about the National Health Service in Great Britain, their socialized medical system. He said he wouldn't touch it. He didn't want it on a silver platter. Why is that even being brought up at a NATO summit?
You know, the president, in both bilateral meetings and even his breakfast, he spent about 40 minutes speaking with the press. And I think this subject, the NHS, the president brought up pretty much every topic under the sun, including Prince Andrew. He was asked, actually, about if he was going to meet with Prince Andrew. We know from reports prior to this that Prince Andrew was barred by the Queen from being at any of the official events, even at this dinner tonight. That was one of the topics brought up. Immigration, if he was going to be implementing in any comments about the British election. I believe the president spoke about this because he was being asked questions. I think the reporters themselves are running out of subjects to talk about. The NHS, I think maybe the president maybe brought the subject up because the Trump administration has previewed that they would like to reform health care next year. It's one of the goals for next year. I believe Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner are being placed on that subject. But other than that, I can't imagine why that subject was mentioned, especially in a meeting with Jens Stoltenberg.
Yeah, hey, Doc Burkhart's got something about it.
Well, at the last year when President Trump was there, Edward, he was asked by reporters about the National Health Service of Britain, and he said, oh, it's a great model, something that we'd like to maybe look at and emulate in the United States, perhaps something we could do. And then this time, he came back and said, well, I don't know that much about it, but I do know I wouldn't want it on a silver platter. And so this is kind of a 180-degree turn on this particular issue. I think that's why they're making news about it right now, is they're using it to say, look, this president, he's turned 180 degrees, polar opposite from just 1 year ago at the last NATO meeting regarding this very topic. And Great Britain caught on and ran with it.
And Great Britain's in the middle of a political campaign for Parliament.
Right.
So anything that President Trump says about their country is going to make news.
Right.
Okay, so let's get back to this this morning spat between President Trump and President Macron. Why did President Trump call President Macron nasty?
So it all stems back to President Macron's statement that NATO is brain dead, specifically for their lack of intervention in stopping the Kurds in northern Syria from being removed, expelled, basically by the Turkish forces that invaded about a month or so ago at this point. But I think the president took it as a personal affront to him. In the sense that the president had extensive discussions by phone with President Erdogan of Turkey, and it almost looked as a front that the president had given a green light for that action to take place. And we've addressed this in the program. We have no dog in the fight on this other than with peace, but the facts on the ground were that Emmanuel Macron was heavily invested with the Syrian forces. One might argue and even want to investigate how far that investment went. The fact that he has made such a big deal about this. But the president's statement about the comment being nasty, being insulting, I believe the president wanted to make clear that Emmanuel Macron's language was taken personally by him.
All right. Hey, we have a video clip of President Trump making these comments this morning in London. Let's watch it.
I heard that President Macron said NATO is brain dead. I think that's very insulting to a lot of different forces, including a man that does a very good job in running NATO. Now, it has a great purpose, especially with the fact that NATO is becoming much more flexible in terms of what it looks at. It's a tough statement, though, when you make a statement like that. That is a very, very nasty statement to essentially 28, including them, 28 countries. I think that, you have a very high unemployment rate in France. France is not doing well economically at all. They're starting to tax other people's products, so therefore we go and tax them. It's just taking place right now on technology, and we're doing their wines and everything else. And it's a very tough statement to make when you have such difficulty in France. You look at what's happened with the yellow vests, or you look at what's going on during certain parts of their season. They've had a very rough year. And you just can't go around making statements like that about NATO. It's very disrespectful.
All right, now wait a minute, Rick. Hold on here. Now, if President Trump had said those remarks about NATO being brain dead, would that have shocked you?
No, because that's the way he was talking last year.
Yes.
But now, he's a defender of NATO.
So which is it? I mean, is he saying that NATO should be disbanded, or is he saying it's all, full speed ahead for NATO?
He's now a defender of the NATO military alliance. So last year he was accused of being a critic, accused of destabilizing NATO, possibly wanting to abolish it. Now he's defending it. So,
well, Macron has also flipped too then.
Yes, because you're absolutely right. Emmanuel Macron was the defender of NATO, and now he's questioning the purpose of continuing NATO. So what's going on?
So, Edward, what do you think? What's the word on the street there in London?
Well, I think someone convinced the president that NATO has a use. It can even maybe be used as the ramming obstacle, basically, to attack China. I think the president was convinced, by Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, the Vice President Mike Pence, both who have given very fiery speeches against China in the last year and a half. I think they convinced the president that one way to reduce the cost on the American taxpayer, if we were to have to treat China the same way we've treated Russia, ring them with missile defense systems, deploy troops to bases in vicinity of their holdings in Asia. I think that what they did is they convinced them it would be easier to sell it to the public if you tied it to an institution that came out of World War II. You think of NATO, you think of what NATO was used for. It was to fight in the mind of the official statements, is to fight communism, fight the spread of the Soviet Union. I think President Trump's been convinced that NATO can be used to further his political gains, because if this is going to be leading to a war of some kind, or if a build-up toward it, he's been convinced that NATO is the great platform for that message to be sent.
Oh, wait a minute, Edward. You're saying that the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, created after World War II to defend the European continent, are you suggesting that NATO war planners are expecting China to invade Slovenia?
No, I think they might tell us that, though, to convince us to pay for it.
I stumped him.
But that is the direction they've gone, right?
The question is so deep, Doc. I mean, really, what are we talking about here? That China's going to invade Lithuania, Slovenia?
Well, that's the line they're going to try to sell us. But they're going to say that they're going to use the word existential threat.
NATO is to defend the European continent.
Against who? Against
China
Russia.
Moving troops to Europe right now?
Not yet. And so, and they don't have any plans to in the near future. So,
but we're being told today that China is our enemy and NATO must prepare for war with China.
In another flip-flop of things here too, Rick, the status of Turkey within NATO has been a question for the past several years. It's not surprising that in the past, President Trump would put out, some hints about Turkey's membership within NATO and its status. But now, once again, another change that's taking place. Just a couple weeks ago, President Erdogan met with President Trump in the White House. But now it's Emmanuel Macron who's questioning whether or not Turkey's membership within NATO is a done deal.
All right, so have the two men, President Trump and President Macron, have they genuinely flipped their positions? President Trump has gone from anti-NATO to pro-NATO. President Macron has gone from pro-NATO to anti-NATO. Have they genuinely flipped their position? Or is President Macron using psychology?
Psychology. That's a new one.
Oh, we used to do that, and we use that in Western Maryland all the time.
So psychology. That's the sneaky psychology, I guess, right?
Sneaky psychology.
Okay.
Are they using psychology on President Trump and making him forcing him to support NATO?
Wow. Now that would be sneaky. But would you be shocked by that?
No, but then at the same time, we have to consider the possibility that President Macron has been talking to Vladimir Putin about that offer that Mr. Putin made 2 years ago in St. Petersburg.
Right.
Let Russia defend you, not NATO. So there is a possibility that Emmanuel Macron has changed his position in his thinking. I really don't want to be in a war with Russia. If he's looking at this saying, hey, the Americans are pushing NATO into a confrontation with Russia, just what does that look like? I mean, on the streets of Paris, in a war with Russia, what does that look like? That looks like Paris destroyed.
Right. Speaking Russian in a couple years.
So why would you do it? So maybe he's having some second thoughts about the strategy to confront Russia, push them to the edge that they would actually carry out a first strike.
Right.
Because nobody wins in a world war. But suddenly this week, as NATO has started this summit, officially starts tomorrow. They're having, this is just the preliminaries yesterday and today. But suddenly, Doc, the headlines are telling us that China is the enemy of NATO. I mean, like overnight, China just decided they're going to invade Europe. I don't think so. I don't think the Chinese are planning to invade Europe. So why is NATO gearing up for a war with China?
Because they need an enemy.
They need an enemy.
Right. They need a reason to exist.
So are they done beating up Russia, and now they're going to spend the next 10 years beating up China?
Well, you heard Mr. Stoltenberg yesterday say that Russia does not pose a threat to us.
No imminent threat. That's what I'm saying. There's something weird going on this week in London at this NATO summit. It's like they've given Russia a pass. Like, okay, we beat you up, we slapped you around, knocked you silly, made you spend a lot of money on missiles, but we're not going to have a fight. Oh, China. We're going to have a battle with China. Is that where it's going?
It seems to be that's the direction that at least the Trump administration is wanting to take things for NATO. Because at one point, President Trump was ready to walk out of NATO. He was saying, you guys aren't paying the bills. He even said that today. You guys still aren't paying your bills, but we're sticking with NATO. So something has radically changed here, Rick.
Well, the war lobby has gotten their claws into Donald Trump. That's what's happened, and he's gung-ho on pardon the pun, on war. In fact, he said today, hey, there were 4 other countries America could have taken their oil, but we didn't.
That's right. And so,
is that I didn't hear him say it. I just read it. Is that for real? He really said it?
That's actually what he said, and we actually have a clip of him saying it too. So to lead up to this, we made the assertion that the reason why we're still in Syria right now is because of the oil. And President Trump has said that. We are taking the oil in Syria. And then today he says, you know what? We could take it from 4 other countries too. So it just, what is going on here, Rick?
Was he referring to wars in the past, or was he saying possible future wars? There's 4 more countries I could go in and get their oil.
Well, let's watch what he says, and then you can discern for yourself. This is clip 7 for control.
Twilight Zone.
Not only have we not left the Kurds, we're working with the Kurds. We have a very good relationship with the Kurds. And we've taken the oil. I've taken the oil. We should have done it in other locations, frankly, where we were. I can name 4 of them right now. But we've taken the oil, and that oil is what they lived off of. And that was going to be taken away from them. But now our great soldiers are right around the oil. We've got the oil. But if we didn't have it, they wouldn't be able to survive. The Kurds wouldn't be able to survive.
Okay,
Does he realize that what he just said, he just made a confession to a U.S. war crime? He really did. He's bragging. He said, we, and then he said, I took the oil.
Right.
I mean, he personalized it, said, I took the oil. You took another country's natural resources. You used military force, invaded a country, seized their natural resources.
Right.
That's a war crime.
So I can think of 3 countries offhand that he might have been talking about. Of course, Iraq,
Libya,
Kuwait.
Kuwait. Well, why Kuwait?
Well, I mean, we had the opportunity in the past to just own Kuwait at one time after the war. And so that might have been a possibility there. What other countries do you think he might be talking about?
Afghanistan doesn't produce oil.
Right. So it has to be another, nation there in the Middle East.
Unless he's thinking of Iran.
Right.
Which we haven't attacked them yet. But by the way...
could be Yemen too. I mean, Yemen could be a possibility as well. So, but I mean, for him to actually say that. Now think about this. If somebody said to you, I took something from you, and I could have taken it from 4 other people too. What would you think about that person? What would you say about the character of that individual? I would call that what? A thief.
Yes.
Am I calling the president a thief? I'm just saying he said that we took the oil and we could have taken it from 4 other countries. So I guess I'm less of a thief because I didn't take it from 4 other countries. Is that the logic there, Rick?
Doc, somebody watching us one day posted online that you and I didn't understand it.
Okay.
They said, Rick, you and Doc don't get it. The oil in Syria is ours, meaning America.
Why?
It's just that the Syrians aren't cooperating.
They're not giving it up.
Yes.
Oh, so how? What makes
it boggles my mind, Doc, that there are people who think like that.
Well, what makes it ours? What's the logic in making it in ours?
Because America is puffed up with pride and arrogance. The American people have been fed this arrogance and pride and this warlike mentality. I don't know why we just don't paint our faces with. Why don't we just have war paint on our faces? I mean, our congressmen and political leaders, they ought to just put war paint. I mean, they're tribal. That's as tribal as you can get to say, I took the oil and I could get more. Didn't that sound like a tribal chief?
Well, it sounds like somebody that's intent on domination of other nations. I mean, I'm just being real here, folks. I mean, if you had oil on your property, let's say you had oil on your land and you had the right to that oil, and you had an oil well there, and somebody came and took that oil well, how would you feel about that?
Well, you certainly would call the police, wouldn't you?
Right. So, but who do you call when you're a country? Right. When you're a country like Syria, and somebody comes and takes your oil well, who do you go to? Well, they went to the United Nations, right?
How are we any different than the ancient Roman Empire?
We're not any different.
We're acting just like the Roman Empire.
In fact, Hugh Hewitt yesterday on his talk show called America the new Rome. Hugh Hewitt did yesterday.
And he's proud of it.
Yeah, so.
He's proud of it.
Right. We're the new Rome. We're the new Roman Empire.
Where is the Roman Empire right now?
On the ash heap of history.
And what caused it to happen?
The same thing that's going to cause the destruction of our nation as well. Overspending, self-indulgence, idolatry, all these things.
Immorality.
Yes.
Constant warfare throughout the world, expanding their military bases in other countries, debasing their currency.
Right.
All the things that America has done.
And having their military spread out all over the world. That was one of the other downfalls of the Roman Empire. They couldn't manage a global military operation from one central location.
Hey, I want to go back what we were talking about. And I guess we can't reach Edward right now. It's getting late in London right now. He was standing in front of Buckingham Palace. They probably were using a psychotronic generator on him. So it was amazing. We had a perfect transmission, video transmission, for over 30 minutes before starting this newscast. And then the moment we started, the video went wacky. I don't know. It had just been bad weather. You know.
I'm getting a message that we've got Edward back.
We got him back? Okay.
So, Edward, are you there?
Yes.
Maybe.
No.
Well, I'm going to keep talking until when Edward appears, I'll stop talking. So CNBC published a story. NATO, the 29-member military alliance, was set up 70 years ago to counter the threat posed by the Soviet Union. But now, another rising military power is at its sight, China.
Yes. They're the new bad guys.
As heads of state gather in UK for a two-day meeting of the alliance, shifting geopolitical relationships and emerging challenges will be the focus for the fractious group. And so many experts and leaders within the group think the alliance should now be focusing on new and emerging military powers like China. So we're being told today, we're being told by the political leaders, by the NATO military leaders, by the propaganda news media, it's not Russia, it's China. We have to get ready for war with China.
And when's that war going to occur, Rick? It's already on the calendar, isn't it?
Yeah, they have a date. Yeah, they have a date.
In fact, we've heard reports from various outlets around the world that says that date is sometime between now and 2030.
Yes.
That there's going to be a major military conflict with China. We're getting ready for it. We're ramping up for it. So now we've pushed Russia to the side and said, all right, Russia's not the bad guy anymore for NATO. China's the bad guy for NATO now.
Doc, is this crazy? Are these guys crazy enough that suddenly Russia is going to be invited into NATO?
Well, you know, remember during the campaign that President Trump even floated that idea out there. He said, maybe we could invite Russia into NATO.
Are they going to say
in the
that
North Atlantic?
Russia can be reformed? Russia could be civilized, you know? And if they behave themselves, they could be on a path to NATO membership within 5 years. Is that possible?
But then again, they would have to be an enemy to China too, right?
Yes, but Russia might have to say, let's see, do we want another 20 years of NATO military bases on our border? Or, let's see, do we want Chinese military bases on our border over Mongolia?
Right. Or maybe we're about to see a change take place globally that happened like in the late 1800s, early 1900s, where there were fresh new alliances that developed. Maybe we'll see an alliance between France, Germany, Russia, and Turkey that that could open. In fact, there was a photograph today. We didn't have time to pull it. There was a photograph today of Emmanuel Macron, Angela Merkel, President Erdogan. I forget who the fourth person was, but I just found that striking in the image there. And it sort of signaled to me, all right, they're having talks on the sidelines of the NATO summit, and they're having these discussions. Maybe part of those discussions, Rick, are an extension of what we saw in St. Petersburg 2 years ago, that there are new military alliances about to, shake out. Listen, the UK is not going to call China an enemy. They depend too much on the technology coming out of China. China is building nuclear power plants in England, 5 of them right now. So there's no way that England is going to go along with saying China's our enemy now. Germany just recently, said we're going to allow Huawei to basically rebuild our infrastructure to implement 5G throughout Germany.
Is that why NATO is panicking?
It could very possibly be, Rick, because they're seeing the influence that China is having with nations like the UK, with Germany, and seeing that move to the east.
If we start seeing and hearing conversations or statements from Vladimir Putin, Mike Pompeo, President Trump, Mr. Stoltenberg from NATO, if we start in the next few days or weeks or the next month or so hearing nice talk between each other, talking about between NATO and the United States and Russia,
right?
That maybe we got to get together and talk.
Well,
maybe we should have some communication. Maybe then I'm going to say we're on to something, and that the strategy now is to not slap Russia, but pat them on the back and say, we think we could be friends with you. You don't have to join NATO. You just have to agree that you won't have military alliances with China.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, Rick, because President Putin kind of floated that trial balloon out there a little bit by making the statement here in response to the NATO meeting that's going on right now. And this is number 2 for control, where President Putin of Russia said that today we must consider the fact that the enlargement of NATO and the development of its military infrastructure near our borders is one of the potential threats to the security of our country. As we know, the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. That's why NATO was created in the first place, not against Russia, but against the Soviet Union. Well, as we know, the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore, and neither does the Warsaw Pact military bloc. And he's got a good point there, which was created by the USSR and its allies in Eastern Europe in response to the creation of NATO. So the Warsaw Pact countries were created in response to the NATO alliance. But NATO not only continues to exist, it continues to develop. And so President Putin is asking the question, why does NATO need to even exist? You're creating an enemy out of us by having NATO exist. So maybe it's an opportunity for NATO to join, for Russia to join the NATO alliance, or maybe it's an opportunity for Russia to say, you know what, you NATO countries out there, do you really want to continue down this path? Do you really want to have the potential of a conflict with us, or would it be better to work together? Would it be better to do business together? Do you like the natural gas that you're getting?
What does it do to China if the U.S. and NATO succeed in splitting China and Russia as allies?
Well, that makes China more aggressive. They're going to have to step up and build their military up. They're going to spend billions, maybe even trillions of dollars developing their military in a fight they didn't even want.
Or does it make them back down and become passive?
Well, and that's a great question. I always refer back to
the Chinese just want to make money.
Right. I refer back to Gerald Celente. The business of America is the business of China is to do business. The business of America is war, and by extension, NATO. That's their business as well, is to have war.
What's an interesting possibility? Another thing that happened, President Putin and President Xi of China
Yes.
launched a day. What's this story about?
Well, and this is a big deal. This is what they're calling the new Dream Pipelines. This is number 9 for control here, if we can go ahead and pull this up. The pipeline is known as the Power of Siberia. It costs $55 billion, and it's going to run 1,800 miles from the Siberian gas fields to China's northern border. And President Putin had these remarks about it. This is a genuinely historical event, not only for the global energy market, but above all for us, for Russia and China. This step takes Russia-China strategic cooperation in energy to a qualitative new level and brings us closer to fulfilling the task set together with Chinese leader Xi Jinping of taking bilateral trade to $200 billion by the year 2024. It looks to me, Rick, like instead of trying to divide Russia and China are moving down a parallel path of development, not only in energy, but also when it comes to monetary supply, looking at alternatives to the current SWIFT system out there. They're creating new alliances around the globe. So it seems to me like that alliance is pretty solid, that you're not going to be able to create a wedge in there. Maybe the thinking in NATO is if we make China an enemy, we make Russia an enemy too at some point. But this is a strange world that we're living in right now.
It is. But if you were being bullied by a guy much bigger than you and stronger and was just aggressively pushing you around, and it went on for years. And then one day he comes over to your house, knocks on the door, and he's got a big smile and says, hey, I'm thinking we could be friends.
Right.
Your reaction is probably like, I don't completely trust this guy, but this is better than the way it was yesterday.
Right. Well, there are more alliances going on with Russia and China than just the monetary supply. One of the big efforts that China is doing right now, China is in charge of the development of 5G throughout Russia, through Huawei. Huawei is developing 5G for Russia. Now, if you pair that with, they're doing the same thing in the UK, and they're doing the same thing in Germany. I'm not sure what the status is on France or not. But if you've got a Chinese telecom company that is going to dominate Russia, Germany, the UK, and other nations in Europe and the former Eastern Bloc as well, you're going to have a massive network of control of information as well. And data is the future oil. Data is the new oil.
So, Doc, we obviously we have a portion of our audience that does not like us covering technology stories.
Right.
And but thank God most of our audience understands why we're doing it. China has made it a priority to be the global leader in several things: artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Blockchain,
Yes.
5G, and also President Xi is personally committed to building a massive smart city in China. They're building a brand new city, ground up, smart city. It's his personal project that he is overseeing.
Is that like their response to the Middle East NEOM city?
Yes, yes. So that's why we want our audience to understand why we have to cover these topics, why we have to be at these technology events, why we have to be kept informed about what's developing, because just because some people don't want to talk about it, it isn't going to make it go away. China is very aggressive, and President Xi has said China will dominate blockchain. We heard it in Singapore.
Right. That they're basically putting the entire government on blockchain.
Absolutely.
They're investing in their educational system, training people in blockchain. They're making the effort to take their nation into the 21st century and beyond. And I remember when I was in Shanghai a year ago for an event there, believe it was Mobile World Congress, I heard the shocking number that there were 500,000 mobile towers throughout China. 500,000. throughout the entire country of China. Think about that. 500,000 towers. You and I are old radio guys and everything. In the U.S., there are about 10,000 towers. That tells you the massive expansion that they've had. Now, they don't have them all activated yet in China, but their goal is to get them activated by 2022. So they've constructed the towers. They haven't installed all the equipment yet, but they're getting ready to really make a leap beyond the U.S. That's why we have to make China an enemy. You know, get right down to it. That's why we have to make them an enemy.
Doc, I didn't mention this, but when we were in Singapore, I think you had a layover in China also, didn't you?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Shanghai. I may have said when I was in Singapore, Beijing, but it was Shanghai. And so my layover was on the return trip was like about 5 hours. But it's a beautiful airport. Shanghai Airport's beautiful. And so the airline had given me access to their lounge. Mm-hmm. So I was grateful for that. Matter of fact, I flew China Eastern. What a great airline. Yes. First time I've ever flown it. Fantastic airline. If you ever go to Asia, China Eastern is a great airline. They treated me so nice, and professional airline. So anyhow, I was in the Shanghai airport in the lounge for 5 hours waiting on my flight to the United States. And I thought, well, I want to see if Trunews, if I can access Trunews. Mm-hmm. I had no trouble at all accessing Trunews in China.
Right.
Trunews is censored in America.
Yes.
But it's freely available in China.
Now, China,
which country am I more free to speak my mind? China or the United States?
And ironically, YouTube is censored in China.
Yes. Yes, you can't get YouTube in China.
But you can get Trunews. And I was watching Trunews as well. And so
there, YouTube. All right. You can watch Trunews in China, but we can't watch YouTube.
You can't Google anything in China. You can Baidu it, but you can't Google it.
Is that because the Chinese know that there's propaganda in YouTube and Google?
Well, and there's going to be propaganda everywhere in the world. We know that. In fact, we see the fencing the national fencing starting to take place. You know, Russia recently said that they're going to develop their own closed system for the internet, that it's just them. China's on that same pathway as well. And that's the way it's going to trend here now. You're going to see nations that say we're going to have to fence off the internet from the rest of the world. That's a scary thought in itself. But they have to protect themselves from the United States.
Trunews is not censored anywhere in the world except the United States.
Right.
Now, how do you explain that? And it's because in other countries, they know that we're fair. They know that we present all sides, that we're not locked into a propaganda matrix, and that the information that we're giving out is favoring one side over the other. We're just we're dangerously truthful.
Dangerously truthful. Yes. I like that. Dangerously truthful.
Yes, and so in America, we're censored because we're dangerously truthful. And Google and YouTube and social media corporations, they don't like anybody that's dangerously truthful. By the way, on that subject, and I'm assuming we can't get Edward back, but he ought to be at his hotel going to bed by now in London. So today, the French Parliament passed a resolution that says criticism of Israel is hate speech.
That's right.
Criticism. All right? There's the Times of Israel. French Parliament backs resolution calling anti-Zionism a form of anti-Semitism. So if you criticize the political movement of Zionism in France, you're now a racist.
Right.
But Zionism is a political movement. It has nothing to do with race. It's a political movement, Doc.
Right. It'd be saying that I hate all Russians because Russians are communists, or I hate all Chinese because Chinese are communists. You know, that's the parallel there.
So what if in the 1930s, what if you said you cannot criticize Nazism because that is
anti-German?
Anti-German. And you go, no, not all the German people are Nazis. It's just some of them are Nazis. Oh, but if you say you're anti-Nazi, you're automatically slandering all the German people. That's the same thing.
Right.
So all Jews are not Zionists. In fact, most Jews are not Zionists. But now if you criticize Zionism in France, you're going to be labeled a racist, practitioner of hate speech. I would say the hate speech is Mikey Weinstein here in the United States,
right,
who's sticking his nose into places he doesn't belong, like going to military bases and filing complaints with the Pentagon to make U.S. soldiers remove their Bibles from their desk,
right?
To shut down religious services of Christians. Now
he's verses even off dog tags.
He's even offended that Christian soldiers have Bible verses on their ID dog tags. That offends him. No, Mikey Weinstein, you offend us. You are the one who is offensive. You're an atheist Jew who is restricting the freedom of religion of Americans in the U.S. Armed Services. And it's time that people like you are told to shut up and go away. I'm tired of it, Doc. I'm tired of being told that I can't speak my mind. There's nobody. Do you see any Christians complaining to the military that Jewish soldiers shouldn't have the Star of David on their dog tag? It doesn't offend me.
I wouldn't care if a Muslim wanted to put a verse of the Quran on a dog tag.
It doesn't offend me. That's their right.
As long as I have the equal opportunity.
Yes.
To do the same.
But you get these atheist Jews who are always filing lawsuits
against
Christians because they're enemies of the cross.
You don't see the atheists filing lawsuits against Muslims or against Jewish people or anything or any other religion. Only Christians.
Because they're enemies of the cross. They're at war with Jesus Christ. They're still 2,000 years later still at war with Jesus Christ. Why don't you get over it? He was resurrected. He's coming back. Stop fighting Jesus and believe on his name and be saved. Get the curse off of you.
Submit to your king.
Yes, he is the King of the Jews. Mikey, you're fighting the King of the Jews. It's a losing battle. Just repent of your sins. Confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Get the curse off of you. You're under a curse. You're under the curses of Deuteronomy 28 for violating the covenant, and you're under a curse. Stop it.
It's because they refuse to be at peace.
Yes.
They could have peace right now in
And there's
Christ.
nobody fighting him. There's nobody trying to take his rights away.
I know. In fact, if you fight him or you say anything about him, other people will take his side.
Yes.
Even evangelicals.
Yes.
We've seen that happen in our own ministry here in the past.
I hope U.S. soldiers will stand up and tell Mikey Weinstein to get out of their business. And by the way, Christians, you need to lobby the White House when President Trump gets back. He needs to issue, he's the commander-in-chief.
Yes.
He needs to issue an order that rescinds the order of the U.S. Army. He can do it.
That's right.
He can do it. He's commander-in-chief, and there's a suggestion for that illustrious Evangelical Advisory Committee, if they could just squeeze into their agenda a little bit of Christianity instead of Zionism, and they ought to be pressuring President Trump, saying, this is outrageous. Mr. President, issue an executive order, your commander-in-chief, tell the U.S. Army that they cannot stop American soldiers from having Bible verses engraved on their dog tags. For heaven's sakes, we're talking about dog tags, ID emblems for people who are killed in battle. And Mikey Weinstein doesn't want Christians to have Bible verses on it? Who is this guy? other than he's an atheist Jew who hates Jesus. And I'm the only one who's got the backbone to say it in public and take the abuse that the Christ-hating Jews throw at me. I'm not afraid of them. I love Jesus Christ, and I'm not going to cower in the face of Jesus haters. I'm going to stand up for Jesus Christ, and I'm going to speak. And people need to tell Mikey Weinstein to hit the road. Mind your own business. We're tired of atheist Jews filing lawsuits, removing crosses, removing Bibles, removing the Word of God. We're tired of it. It's been going on for decades.
Yes.
90+% of all the court actions to remove Christian emblems and Bibles and everything, stop prayer, 90-some% of all those actions were filed by Jews.
Not Muslims?
No, Jews.
Not atheists?
No Muslims have been attacking my religious freedom in America.
No Buddhists?
Nope, Jews. The reason our religious freedoms have been curtailed over the past 50 years is because of Jews. They have been at the forefront of filing these lawsuits, and it's time that Christians wake up. Right? Put a stop to this. Does not Jesus Christ mean something to you? Some Jew comes into your town and says, hey, your high school football team has been praying at the beginning of the football team. That offends me. So what? So what? All right? Your town, your Board of Education just folds like a cheap Walmart lawn chair?
Yes, they do.
They do. It's shameful behavior.
Because they're scared.
Yes. Scared of what?
The fear of the Jews, just like the Bible talks about in the New Testament.
What are they going to do to you? What are they going to do?
Send you a sternly worded email?
Right.
Take you to court?
Yeah. What if you just tell the judges, take a hike? Is the judge coming over to your high school and personally stop you from praying? Nobody's standing up to these people. But Jesus hung on a cross for you. And Christians in this country won't stand for him. Jesus hung on a cross for you. Won't you stand for him? In the face of Jesus-hating atheists. They're really not atheists. Because an atheist doesn't believe in any God. These people have a God. His name is Lucifer. That's who they serve. And I'm not going to back down. I'm not going to cower. That's it for today. I don't think we can get Edward back on the line. We're going to wrap it up today. Thank you so much for watching True News. Hey, don't forget to pre-order my new book, Final Day. That final day is coming. Jesus Christ is coming back. He's going to put an end to all this madness, this craziness, this opposition to his kingdom. It's all going to come to a quick, sudden end. You can read about it in Final Day. Glory to God. His kingdom comes into its full manifestation for eternity. It's not for 1,000 years. We're not going to have a Zionist kingdom on the earth for 1,000 years. We're going to have Jesus Christ's kingdom on the new earth for eternity. There are no more years after he comes back. It's just eternity because it's all about Jesus Christ. I'd like you to have a copy of that book. You can pre-order it. It's going to be out in early 2020. We're taking pre-orders right now. Go to trunews.com, TRUNEWS, trunews.com. Click the banner at the top, and it will give you two options. $30 donation, and we will send you a hardback copy of the book. For a $100 donation, you'll get the book and my signature inside the book. I will personally autograph it for you. Thousands of people have already pre-ordered the book, and we want you to have a copy too. You be first in line. So listen, I think we will be sold out of the first run before the books get here.
That's a good problem to have.
Okay, and the reason that's why we're doing pre-orders, because you'll have to wait for the second printing, and that could take a couple months until we get a second printing. So that's why we want you to pre-order. You'll get your copy first. Go to trunews.com, click the banner, and you can pre-order Final Day. It is going to bless you. I'm telling you, that book has got fresh revelations in it from the Word of God that are going to just blow you away, and you're going to go, wow, why didn't we see this before? It's right there in the Word. It's so simple. The reason we don't see it is because of religion.
That's right.
All of us, we get blinded by religion. And the Word of God is so plain and simple. So the book is full of Scripture. Authorized King James Scripture. All right? Just to let everybody know for certain that it's authorized King James. So check it out. Go to Trunews.com. Order your copy of Final Day. That's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll make another attempt to reach Edward in London. We tell him not to stand in front of Buckingham Palace. They must have so much electronics.
And the psychotronic generator.
Yeah, the psychotronic generators were wiping out the transmission there. We don't know what happened. It was perfect before we started, and it went wacky the moment we started the program. That's it for today. We love you so much. We'll be back here tomorrow.
God bless you.